I want to know your view on power of the youth. How do you mobilize the power of the youth? India is a country that has the potential and has the requirement also.
So, doing the line of work that we do as social entrepreneurs, as social activists, I think that the word that we keep going back to is resilience, right? You have to be resilient because the discrimination, hate, injustice is so pervasive and aggressive, and it's a pandemic of like sexual abuse and discrimination, and even the whole rise of populism that you're seeing these days. So when the oppression is that aggressive, you have to be resilient to be able to fight it in a sustained fashion. And this is where young people come in, because young people are intrinsically resilient. And India has the largest youth population globally. I mean, that's a number that you cannot beat. And if you see revolutions around the world, it's young people who take to the streets. And be it the Arab Spring Revolution, be it what happened after the Nirbhaya episode, it's young people who took to the streets and demanded for change, demanded for accountability. And also from a very personal perspective, I see this all the time when we get calls from survivors who've been sexually abused. The older people always reach out being like, listen, this is what happened, I want justice. But the younger, and of course that's right, they're right and they won't right, but the younger people who reach out, it's more often than not the same thing that they tell me. Listen, my mom said, I've also been abused, we just don't talk about it. My parents said, for your own reputation's sake, we won't talk about it, we won't address it. But I just realized after we took your gender sensitization seminar that the person who's put his hands on me is also putting his hands on other children. So I want to speak up now. So even though these young people's parents and adults let them down, they still have a moral compass that's not been compromised as of yet. And that, combined with youth resilience and almost this naive spirit that we have, right? But we're like, why going to go up and do it? Who's going to tell us otherwise? And Indians also have this jugaad in them. We hustle hard. So when you have all of this, it's almost a matter of making young people aware about their rights, providing them with safe platforms and standing behind them to amplify their voice. That's more than enough to mobilize them for them to lead the movement to change.
With the in these last 2-3 months, we've come across instances of abuse in the business of cinema, and India is not isolated.
Right.
Have you had any grievance? Have you had anybody complain about this kind of repression that they have seen in cinema, and they would like to speak about it, or they would like to fight a case against any popular producer, director, actor, any cinematographer?
Look, I just think the first thing that we need to acknowledge is, if you're in any space, be it a religious institution, be it a political institution, be it the film industry, be it the modeling industry, be it a workplace, be it your homes, no place is safe, or be it even the streets. So I would not want to bracket one industry and say, listen, that's a problem industry.
Sure.
Because every industry is a problem industry. We don't have, even though we have strong laws, we don't have enough implementation mechanisms. The workplace, we have great POSH Act, but the implementation of it is extremely weak. There are no mechanisms in place to make sure that if an employer is not, abiding by the ICC guidelines, there's no penalties or provisions under the IBC for it. So we still need to work on a stronger, robust system of implementation. So of course, you talk about, Ranveer Singh put up there were the hoardings that came up recently for an ad campaign that he did with an organization where they pulled it down because it was ridiculously sexist remarks about a woman that he'd thrown over his shoulder, take your work home, if you remember. They took it down, they issued an apology for it. So I think it's great that people are demanding for accountability, and for too long, people were relying on women keeping quiet.
I see.
Now that women are speaking up, they are more and more, expecting institutions and the harassers, when they're demanding for accountability on that level and scale, without saying, the shame is yours to bear, not mine. We're seeing a revolution on that front.
I see. And what are your views on the Me Too campaign? We saw just too many people come out and, address the gravity of the situation only now. How do you fare in India on the scale of addressing this issue? Do you think we are just taking baby steps now?
I want to start with saying that I do think we have good, strong, robust laws in place. The implementation of it is extremely weak. And it's unfortunate that we're finding a global movement of solidarity, because every woman can relate to having been sexually abused having been touched up without her consent, stared at, groped, molested at some point or the other in our life, and that has become our normal reality for us, right? Where we say things like, "I raped to nahi hua na," and even if it's been raped, you still don't report it. So that's really worrisome. It's amazing that women are taking to social media, finding that solidarity, and saying that the whole point of Me Too was breaking apart the stigmatization that you feel, and the feeling of loneliness where you tend to blame yourself, you tend to internalize it, being like, what did I do wrong? Could I have possibly prevented the abuse, XYZ? And to just completely say, let's focus on the abuser. We need a stronger movement of solidarity, and it was great to have so many Indian women take to social media and say that this is not okay anymore, and we're going to speak up about it. And women were connecting with each other. We had allies, not just women, gender non-conforming people were speaking up, men were speaking up. It was great to see India be at the forefront of this conversation and say that we need to have more honest conversations about these issues.
Tell me, this is my last question. Are the Indian women ready to come out and address the issue of sexual harassment? And as a country, how backward are we or how forward are we on the subject?
So it's important to remember that we had the largest protests against sexual harassment after the Nirvaya episode globally. No other country around the world has seen that kind of protest for sexual harassment demanding for accountability. So Indian women have already come out on the street and said we need better laws. But also at the same time, I think for so long we've been discriminated against that we have normalized it over time. We don't speak about it. The amount of sexual violence that we go through within our own homes, the amount of domestic violence that we go through within our own homes, and then this concept of, ghar ki baat ghar pe rakho. So there is a lot of unlearning that we need to do, especially amongst the middle class, upper middle class, rich, because the poor people they are my brave people who go and file a police complaint. I don't need to convince them to go to the police station. And what I often find, which is disheartening, is parents refusing, or mothers even sometimes refusing to send their children for counseling, even if they don't report the sexual crime. They don't even send them for counseling after the child has been sexually abused. So we have to do a lot of unlearning. We need to be more aware about our rights. This is where solidarity comes into play, and we need to speak up and speak up and speak up, even if we are called bossy, bitchy, hard to work with, difficult to work with. And we need to stop apologizing for demanding for our rights and equality. So we definitely have to take a lot more progressive steps, but we are doing that, and Indian women have always done that. So I don't want to paint us as a weak sect of society at all. We're strong. We just need to tap into that and carry on.
Glad. More power to people.
Thank
like
you so much. Thank you.